Today we're going to talk about the relative pronoun in Latin, which is qui quae quod. But before we even get into how to form it and how to use it, let's talk about relative pronouns in general. So what is a relative pronoun? In English, we use who, which, or that for our relative pronouns, and it signals a subordinate clause, which is much easier to see in example. So if we look at the bottom here, the man who lives in Rome works in the forum. So who lives in Rome is our subordinate clause started by our relative pronoun who. And this whole clause tells us something about the man. So really, this whole clause is acting kind of like an adjective, telling us a little bit more information about what it refers back to, also known as its antecedent, the man. So let's look how to form qui quae quod in Latin. You're going to have to take a moment to pause the video right now, look over the forms, copy them down, and get to know them. You should start memorizing these things because they'll pop up time and time again in Latin. So let's talk about how qui quae quod works in Latin. First, we said the relative clause, which starts with our relative pronoun qui quae quod, refers back to the noun it modifies. And this noun is called the antecedent. So, like with adjectives, the relative pronoun must agree in number and gender with the noun that it refers back to with its antecedent. However, the case won't necessarily be the same as its antecedent because qui quae quod can work differently in sentences, and this is easiest to see with some examples. So let's look at these sentences below. The first one, where qui in Roma habitat in fora laborat, is the exact same sentence in Latin that we saw as our English example. So note that in this sentence, qui is our relative pronoun, and the clause which contains qui runs all the way from our relative pronoun until the first verb we encounter. So qui in Roma habitat. And it's clear in this sentence that qui is working as the subject of habitat, and that is why it is in the nominative. It's also masculine and singular because it refers back to wir, which is its antecedent. So the man who is living in Rome works in the forum is our sentence. Our subordinate clause is just who is living in Rome. Note in this sentence, who, qui, is the subject, and that's why it's in the nominative. Now let's look at our second example. Flores quos puellae deiti erant splendidi. So our first step, as always, is to find our form of qui quae quod. Here we have quos, and find the phrase in which it is contained. So it's quos puellae deiti, from our relative pronoun to our first verb. It's clear in this sentence that quos is acting as our direct object because it's in the accusative plural. And so our subordinate clause translates which I gave to the girl. If we look at this in the larger context of the sentence, we know that quos refers back to flores, flores being the antecedent, because they are the same gender and number. And so when we put this together, we get the flowers which I gave to the girl were splendid. Note here that even though quos is referring back to flores, it is not in the nominative, it's in the accusative, because that's how it functions within the subordinate clause. Finally, we can look at our third sentence. It's clear that here our form of qui quae quod is qua, and that the phrase containing it is in qua agricola habitat. Note that in this phrase, qua is in the ablative singular because it's the object of the preposition in. And in a larger sense, qua refers back to wilam because the sentence itself means the slaves built the farmhouse in which the farmer lives. So qua refers back to wilam, which is its antecedent. It's in the same gender and number as it, but it's in the ablative within the subordinate clause because it's working as the object of a preposition.